Let me move to ask, let me just begin with you, Mr. Skarzinski. In a letter to this committee in October, Arbitron represented that it is committed to the Media Rating Council accreditation process. Do you agree that the MRC standards and its codes of conduct ensure fair, accurate, and reliable rating data? You consider them as being, is it fair, reliable rating data?
Mr. Chairman, Arbitron is committed to the MRC process, and we believe that the MRC process does yield the result that you've just described.
Well, then, if that's the case, why is it that you've only been approved in 2 out of the 33? I mean, if that's the case. I mean, why would you continue to roll out if you really respect that process and feel that it's important? I mean, why would you continue to do that?
Mr. Chairman, Arbitron follows the rules of the MRC process. The MRC process does not require that a audience measurement service provider obtain accreditation prior to commercialization. The process to obtain accreditation can take many, many years. And this is the industry practice that audience measurement service providers, not only in radio, but in television, internet, cable TV, print, while striving to get accreditation, can commercialize a market and a service. So we're following the rules. The important step before commercialization is that an audit is conducted, as Mr. Ivey has described, by a third party. In the case of Arbitron, Ernst & Young is the third-party auditor excuse me, who audits our markets prior to commercialization. And the audit process is a very lengthy, thorough, and detailed process. And pardon me, and I can assure you, Mr. Chairman, that as CEO of Arbitron, if there was a showstopper that came up in the context of the audit, that we would not commercialize a market. So we're following the rules. Accreditation can take many, many years.
You have to shorten your answers because
Nielsen, in its TV audience measurement, launched that electronic measurement started in 2002, and they have obtained probably 10 or 11 accredited markets at this point in time and are still seeking accreditation. So this is the industry practice.
Mr. Skarzinski, though, I mean, let's face it. Now, we're talking about 33 markets, and you only have approval in 2. I mean, I could see maybe 1 or 2 over, and then you're still working on it. But, I mean, to me, that seems like you're just totally ignoring and just doing whatever you want to do. I mean, that's what, there's a clear indication here. Let me just ask you, Mr. Ivey, what are the main reasons that the MRC has not granted accreditation to Arbitron in these 31 markets?
What are the reasons?
Yes.
Is that your question, Mr. Chairman?
That's the question.
Sure. Well, first of all, if I could just spend a second, because Mr. Skarzinski raised a rather complex issue. It is true that the MRC is not a government organization. We have no authority, and we were not designed to prevent a commercial enterprise from rolling out a product. We don't have that type of authority. However, we do have a voluntary code of conduct, and that voluntary code of conduct says that at minimum a rating service should have an audit before it commercializes a product and have that exposed to our audit committee so that we can decide whether it should be accredited or not, because that's what the marketplace relies on. However, the voluntary code of conduct goes on to make other recommendations. The voluntary code of conduct says that we would prefer that a rating service doesn't implement a product until it's accredited. And we also say that we would prefer that a rating service doesn't discontinue an accredited service before they get accreditation of a new product. So those preferences are stated, but you should know that because of the way we're structured as an organization, we don't enforce that. And we've been reviewed by the Department of Justice and the FTC. And, you know, when Nielsen, Mr. Skarzinski referenced Nielsen, they were rolling out products without getting accreditation. That led to 2 Senate hearings on the matter similar to this, where customers were saying, why is Nielsen rolling out these products? Why didn't the MRC accredit it? And Senate hearings happened. So this causes controversy. That's why we have those recommendations in our voluntary code. But we cannot enforce that because we're not a government organization. And I'm not asking you to set that power to us, but I'm just trying to explain the facts, that we state our preferences. We believe very strongly that an audit needs to be conducted and a marketplace should know whether accreditation is granted or not for those 30 markets so that they can either rely on that or not. Many, many customers look to accreditation as kind of like the good housekeeping seal. And when that's not present, they know that it's not present for a reason. As Ms. Chagrin said, we don't do that arbitrarily. So hope that clears it up. We've made numerous recommendations to Arbitron.
What was their response?
Well, Arbitron has implemented numerous recommendations. We still have some on the table. We're kind of getting to a stage where some of these recommendations are very tough because this methodology requires, if you put yourself, Mr. Chairman, in the position of a panelist for PPM, you have to wear this PPM device. You not only have to wear it when you're here, but you have to wear it at home. You have to wear it when you wake up in the morning. You have to carry it with you when you go to the bathroom, when you take a shower. When you come home from work, you carry that methodology with you, the meter with you. Those are human conditions and human cooperation that are difficult to gather. So we've made a lot of recommendations to Arbitron. We've got pages and pages of recommendations and letter. Arbitron has implemented many of those. Some of them have worked. Some of them have not worked. And some of the more expensive ones, like sending people out to train householders on a wider basis, in person, on how to use the meter, having in-person contact to explain to people why it's important, etc. Those are very costly. So Arbitron is trying to balance the cost implications and the improvement implications in these services. And I can't speak for Arbitron in the matter, but I can tell you it's a very complex situation. We think we know a lot about what it takes to improve, and those recommendations are on the table. They're about in-person contact, more intense installation and training for the panelists, making sure that geographically the panel is representative. You know, there are a lot of issues that are on the table with us and Arbitron, and you know, you guys have subpoenaed our records, and you have a lot of that information. And some of them are very confidential, so I don't know whether we should, because of the trade aspects, whether we should go into those in that much detail. I hope I answered your question.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Skarzinski, why are you sort of resisting, you know, the suggestions and recommendations, and instead of making the changes you just rather roll out? And I'm afraid that you're going to kill some of these radio stations, you know, if you continue to do this and not respond. I mean, some of them will be gone, you know, by the time many of these things might even be dealt with at all.
Mr. Chairman, we have a very active program to improve our service based on the recommendations that we have received from not only from our customers but also from Mr. Ivey and the MRC staff. And we don't feel that the service is flawed. We feel actually that for 9 markets, including the New York market, our performance in 2009 is very, very strong, and we feel we're performing at a level that deserves MRC accreditation. And I believe that we have supplied to the committee the actual reports that we submitted to the MRC last month to comment on our performance and to show the trends and to show where we are in particular markets, including New York. So we welcome the suggestions for improvements. We're making these improvements. Mr. Ivy commented on the training activities. We have a very, very extensive training program to bring in and orient a new panelist. We have local market coaches who go out into the field and help with a panelist. As a matter of fact, 2 Saturdays ago, I spent the afternoon with one of our local market coaches in Prince George's County here in Maryland, and worked with the panelists, this particular household, to help them through the process. So we're very, very active in trying to get all of our panelists to participate at a performance level. And we feel, certainly in the case of New York and these 9 markets, 8 other markets, that we're performing at a level that would earn us MRC accreditation.
Let me say what my problem is. My problem is that I'm looking and I see that some of these recommendations were made 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I'm also looking at the fact that there was one station in New York in particular that was rated number 1. And now that station is number 15, you know, without moving any place, going any place, doing anything, you know. But the point is that, you know, doesn't that bother you? But you rather just continue to roll out?
The health and prosperity
and the fact
of
that you have not, the fact that you have not moved to correct some of these recommendations over the past 2 years.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, we have implemented many of these recommendations. We have a program of over 60 initiatives that we have worked on and employed across all of our PPM markets. So I don't think it's correct to say that we are not acting on these recommendations, that we're not making these improvements. I would beg to differ, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Hunting, then we'll move along. Go ahead. Yes.
Chairman, I'm a little disturbed by
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little disturbed and disappointed by 2 things that Mr. Skarzinski has said that I think cut right to the heart of what this is about. One was that if there were some problem identified before going to currency that was a showstopper, the company would not go to currency. Let's look at what the problem was that was not enough to go to currency. 30, 40, 50, 60% declines in ratings for some stations. If there had been a new technology that had that impact on voter participation, or on school segregation, or on equal employment, or on fair housing, or environmental protection, that would be a showstopper by any standard. It would be a national scandal. Because this affects democracy so deeply, it is just as much of a scandal. The other thing that disturbed me was, and I appreciate the good intentions, that the company is going to begin to develop an engagement index. The difficulty is that that's been a recommendation that we've been waiting for 3 years, and it's not that difficult. And there just comes a time when you just can't rely alone on promises and have to begin to undertake some oversight based on past history.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shegrin. And my time is, I think, expired. I think there's something wrong with this clock. I know I've been talking for more than 5 minutes. You know,
that's okay. We like
you know,
what you're saying. I want to reinforce what Mr. Honig said in terms of showstoppers. I think a major issue here is the fact that some of these problems, most of the problems that we are seeing today, we saw in the early audits in the markets that were originally rolled out, and we brought those both as individual customers and through the MRC to Arbitron and saying, you have some basic problems, we have some basic concerns. Had they stopped then and addressed those, we probably wouldn't have 33 markets out there that have identical flaws. The problem today is that now there are 33 that need fixing or 31 that need fixing, and it gets much, much more difficult and more costly to fix. And unless there is some way and some stoppage and some way to go back and fix the basic flaws, we will continue to live with this until there is no diversity in radio.